Nick, I think one of the best things you can possibly have in a film is to have that film transcend its own like title and be like, when they make other movies, they describe it as like a blank style film. And I think there's very few films that employ a style like Groundhog Day, where they go, we're going to Groundhog Day a horror film and make Happy Death
or a
Day.
Sci-fi movie.
Yeah, or make Edge of Tomorrow and make we're going to Groundhog Day this idea. Like, what an interesting idea. I mean, I think even in popular culture, even people refer to when they get like sent off that they get Groundhog Day. Like that was how it was used when people were being sent off to Iraq or Afghanistan during the early 2000s. It's like, I'm going to go serve.
You have to go back out there. Yeah.
And I think that's just an incredibly interesting way to get stuck with like a title of that.
Repetition.
Yeah.
God, we hate it.
Mm-hmm. Every single day, we start our day, we wake up, we go to work.
Even though we like routine.
Yep.
We hate repetition.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to talk about today on Kyle and Nick on Film. We're going to talk about the classic film Groundhog Day from 1993, directed by Harold Ramis, starring Bill Murray. Definitely one of those movies that is a comedy through and through.
Yeah. But
the more that you ruminate with it, the more that you watch it and discover it, it really does have like an in-depth way to view the world.
It does.
So it's an incredibly interesting film. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to go through some of the randomness of making the film and some of the fun things that we experienced revisiting this film, which is now, 27 years old. So,
God, is it?
Yep. It's been on repeat for 27 years. So all of that and more, we're going to talk about it on Kyle and Nick on Film. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Kyle and Nick on Film. Again, today we're talking Groundhog Day, directed by Harold Ramis, who's most well known for, he played one of the Ghostbusters.
Stripes.
Just
pops in my head, Stripes.
His more recent films being like Year One, The Ice Harvest. Again, he passed away just a couple years ago. Really,
cut his teeth on directing Caddyshack.
That's a cutting teeth movie too.
Didn't really have a script list. They just went along and realized maybe we should have some kind of formula when we make movies.
Yeah.
Groundhog Day, when it came out, wasn't really. It was panned by critics. It was.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why I think it was because it wasn't a laugh out loud slapstick comedy. It has some visceral points to it.
Yep.
And as a kid, it's like Bill Murray's in. Let's go see it. It's going to be funny. And then you're like, well, where's the funny?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't. It's a slow burn of comedy that we're not used to Harold Ramis and Bill Murray doing before this movie.
Mm-hmm. I think the film would have exploded more if it was made 10, 15, maybe 20 years later, right out of the gate. I think because we do have a different sense of comedy now than we did before. I think, again, like you mentioned, it stars Bill Murray as Phil Connors. He's a TV weatherman who basically hates everything. He especially doesn't like that he has to do his yearly sojourns to Puxatawny to see the groundhog.
His contract obligation.
Yeah, so definitely like not looking forward to this another year of doing it. And he's really, he's in need of a good It's a Wonderful Lifing with himself. He needs to, go through something to really come out on the other end. And he wakes up the morning after it's done to find that he's reliving the same day over and over again.
Now, there's a reason why I'm wearing my gray today. Is because that's the whole point of the movie. Is there's really no temperament to it. It's constantly this overshadowing of misery in your life. That somehow there needs to be this gigantic to snap you out of it, right? Something needs to happen. And Bill Murray is perfectly cast as this person that just letting life beat him to nonsense and just let it, just let it be. I don't care anymore. And it seems like mystical forces, we don't really know what, is making him want to try it again. Yeah.
And my guess is Bill Murray got a lot of his frustration in the character. He was actually bit by the groundhog twice during production, so I'm sure that he probably just didn't like groundhogs after that anyway. He went into the film, Bill Murray did, asking Harold Ramis a lot of the time, whenever they film a scene, he goes, how do you want me to do it? Good Phil or bad Phil? Like, that was how it came down to their conversations, where he needed to know if he was coming into it from a pessimistic viewpoint or an optimistic viewpoint. And that's really the journey of Phil, is that he's learning to appreciate the little things in life. I mean, really, that's all of the movie, is little things in life.
No, that's a big, gigantic thing about it. And not to mention just, the whole daily grind. You know, eventually just snap out of it and get out in the world and enjoy things. And obviously, for somebody who didn't appreciate life to begin with, has to find some reason to enjoy it. The comedy is the repetition, right?
Yeah, I think again, like that's why I think on multiple viewings you get the repetition of the repetition, and it works again and again and again as you go through. The comedy is all built around how was this experience yesterday and how will this experience be tomorrow.
Yeah.
I particularly, one of my favorite little moments is just Ned the Head Ryerson, played wonderfully by Stephen Tobolowsky.
Yeah, the insurance,
love him.
The overly nice, you could walk all over him. Thank you.
Yeah, I have both known people who were like Ned the Head Ryerson, and I've been Ned the Head Ryerson, so I get it. I think what's great about it too is you have again like narcissistic Phil Connors met by Rita, his new producer. You know, Andy McDowell, wonderfully from Sex, Lies, and Videotape. She was in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Most recently from Ready or Not.
You got me.
Which I mean, she was just fantastic there. And I think
she was. Yes.
She's one of those actresses again, kind of like disappeared after the 90s. She did a really great amount of work in the 90s, and she is able to match the narcissism with the optimism and the right. Like she loves the little things in life.
It's a wonderful balance. I think if you can't find somebody that's flashy, you had to find somebody like Andy McDowell fits perfect that can actually throw darts back at him. Obviously, Bill Murray can play a loud character, but here Andy can match him perfectly, being a loud character, being salty, throw it back at him. So I like the casting of it.
She's very Girl Next Doorish.
Yeah.
You know, like she's never been seen, she's never been seen like
glamour,
in the teenage kind of style of things, but she's definitely someone you probably knew on your street growing up, kind of a like thing.
Yeah.
And then you add in probably the only amount of like true comedy that's just comedy in the film being Chris Elliott. You know, as the cameraman, Larry, he's just kind of like he's the only amount of comedy that you don't really have to watch the film twice to get.
And Chris is one of those that at the time he was regarded as a great stand-up comedian. When he got in this movie, he was well known. He's kind of gone away a little bit. David Letterman loved him. And had him on anytime he could get him on the show. So yeah, you have this dynamic of a power punch almost. Yeah.
It's a movie that it has its own world in a lot of ways. Like it kind of reminds me of like a snow globe that you'd enter for a little bit of time. And that could be from like the musical score from George Fenton. Pembroke J. Herring, who did the editing, must have had a monumental task of like putting together a film that seems interesting, and as you go through the same experience,
doing the routine of piecing together a movie that's about repetition.
Yeah, because it's definitely like it's not something that hadn't been done before at this time. Like there were elements of the repetition of things done in television before. There was elements of it in literature. This is probably the first mainstream movie to really hit that well, and that's a tough thing to do editing wise.
Yeah, I'm thinking because I like noirs. There's a great noir movie called Repeat Performance where a girl repeats the 1947, and that was just played out a couple days ago. But yeah, so the concept of things playing out over and over again is not relatively new, but how you present it and how you handle it.
Yeah.
How.
And that's kind of something where like Harold Ramis comes in, because I think he got the material. He took a screenplay from Danny Rubin, who had done Hear No Evil, I believe. Yeah. He had just sold that, and he was kind of looking for his next big film to write. And part of it was just like if you followed a person for reliving his life over and over again, how would they change? Like he was really interested in the change of things. Harold Ramis took that, found some comedy to mine from it, especially like the thing where they both really agreed on it was how Phil was obviously very early on going to use this to seduce a woman. Like by learning, the school that he went to. Well, he learned the school that this woman went to, her name and her teacher, and then he snuck into it. And it's such a smarmy thing to do, and definitely something that wouldn't be in film today. But
Bill could do smarmy, what?
Yeah, he does smarmy like nobody's business.
What works in this movie is they actually project what would you really do if you're trapped in a day, and you would eventually have a little bit more freedom. A comedy is of just doing entertain yourself, right? There's a lot of things that Bill Murray's character does to entertain himself but eventually that wears off. That's the whole point of this. It wears off. The whole repetition, it's annoying. When's it going to end? How it going to end? So even though there's a mystery to this, he doesn't really know how to navigate it. He knows he's stuck somewhere. He's stuck in this loop. He's just going to wreak havoc. He knows he can't die because he's just going to wake up the next day.
Well, I love that they exhaust all options for him.
Yes,
he tries to fake being a better person, and it doesn't work. He tries to take advantage of the situation, and it doesn't work. He's gone through every single attempt, and it doesn't work. And then he finally says, I'm just going to die, which is like one of the darkest things you can put in a comedy is life is meaningless. I might as well just die.
That is almost like suicide.
Yeah. And so he does it, and it still doesn't work.
No.
And even when he gets to the point of like trying to change and become better, that moment where he sees the old man who's cold outside, he takes him in. Like what a beautiful moment in a comedy.
You need that.
And he continually fails though. And he like gets him soup and he gets him food, and the guy still dies. And like there's that moment where he asks, he goes, where is he? I want to see him. And she goes, sometimes old people just die. And I mean, what a hard hitting scene to have in a comedy. I think it's through that the more subtle comedy that happens earlier in the film becomes more vibrant, because you know that it's not always a happy story.
Right. And we talked about this before. My show is one person's tragedy is another person's comedy, and there's a fine line between tragedy and comedy, and it definitely sometimes it's just merely a point of view that you feel taking the woodchuck or into the truck, and he's like, that's it, let's just go out in style.
And he's like that's gruesome too. He's like taking this groundhog and all these like people on a high speed chase. Like we see the darkest moments, and that's where the levity comes in. Harold Ramis, like he really connected with the work in a lot of ways. He had a lot of little like inside jokes and stuff. All the clocks in the diner are set to the exact same time because the time is all stopped. Like just like again, it's something where you only notice if you zoom in and really care. But like he had a really attention to detail for it. It's probably one of the most emotionally strong Harold Ramis films. The guy's known for his laugh out loud comedies, but he can do these kind of like darker, more solemn pieces at times too.
But it has a sense of authenticity. Like what would happen if you're really stuck in the same day doing the same thing over and over again? You'll probably enjoy a little bit, but eventually all that wears off when you exhaust all resources, when you've done everything, and eventually you just give up and you're like, I'm done. I don't know what to do. And then that's when the epiphany starts happening after you try to kill yourself. Then you figure out, okay, what can I do to change my perception?
And I think what's interesting is there's been a lot of people online that have taken to task the idea of like how long has he been stuck in here throughout the film, all the things he's had to master. Various resources online said 3,000 days, 4,000 days, 12,000 days, which equates to about 34 years were needed to do things like master the piano, become an ice sculptor. Like they go through all these different things that you would have to learn to really get through. And when you really get to that number, it's staggering when you think about like, would he have had to spend all that time there? Like, is he even going to be sane if he ever comes out of it? Is the question that I kept coming to with that is.
Right. There's like after their transition, can you be the same person that before the journey started?
If you were to come out of something like that and you left town, would you not just get anxiety from like leaving? Like
you would.
It's really like the toll taken on him is quite something. And I know Bill Murray was going through some things. He was ending his marriage during this time that the filming was happening. So he was very obsessive over playing the character of Phil. And that actually like caused a lot of rifting between him and Ramis. They notoriously ended their friendship.
Very public.
Didn't come back to it until afterwards. It's one of those films. The obsession of the character is him trying to get out of it, and I think that's a really emotional thing that Bill is actually like dealing with outside the film, puts into the character. It's a really deep way of him trying to find an exit that works. So it's quite something. We also get Brian Doyle Murray, brother, appearing again.
Bill Murray's brother's in this.
We talked about Brian Doyle Murray being the guy that just appears occasionally throughout different films, and he gets some time here with the Groundhog, and that's kind of fun. I like that there's no explanation given. The screenplay had through multiple drafts no explanation given. I'm the first guy who says you should explain what needs to be explained. This doesn't need it though.
I think there's a lot of turmoil. Right. If you get explained, then it cheapens the experience. You're right.
And various explanations through the different drafts were things like witchcraft and like things like that, where it's like if that had been in the film, that would have lessened
But the emphasis shouldn't be why it happened. The emphasis is how you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not concentrate
or more just what you are as a person that has
Yeah.
caused you to end up into it.
Got it.
Definitely that character transformation is like, that's all I need is like, he's not a good guy. Just throw him in a time loop. He'll be all right.
All right, Doctor Strange.
Yeah. Well, and what I think about the film too is it's kind of transcended its own, you know, its own comedy sense. And actually, I was reading online that there's a lot of people who believe, you know, in the Buddhist faith, that the film, you know, it takes 10,000 years for a soul to evolve to the next level. And like, that's how a lot of people have viewed the film. It's like that this is his test, that he needs to
Like
evolve
first
to the next
stage.
level.
Okay.
Spiritual
I like
transcendence is in there.
I
And
like
the reason why they point that out is the second draft of the script literally notates he's in the time loop for 10,000 years. It's part of the script.
Okay.
And so people kind of take on to it. They've come out now and said, like Danny Rubin said, that wasn't part of my initial idea. But I like when you can take a film that's not entirely about that and you can apply something outside of it. I think it's kind of interesting to see, like, would he have been in there for 10,000 years to come out and like become something different?
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that adds to that level of awfulness. Like, when you think about it, doesn't it just makes you anxious thinking about that?
Right, because if you're stuck in the time, there's like, there's no consequence. Just do whatever you want. You're going to go back there tomorrow and start all over again.
I got to imagine his period of like no consequence was probably a large bulk of that time. Like, he went through that for a long time of no consequence problem making.
Get it all out of your system. Yeah.
There's the little moments too. Like, like appreciating the little things. I love the scene where he's just eating. He's just gluttoning himself to death. Like, whatever, I don't care. And he takes that one like pastry and just puts it in his mouth like that. Prime Bill Murray, prime comedy. But it's again, like, if you had no consequence, if nothing mattered, I'd probably spend a couple days just eating whatever I wanted to as well. I'd get through that.
I like it when he's in the diner and he just like, that's gonna happen, then this is gonna happen.
Oh yeah.
And then she's like, "What? Are you a wizard?" No, he's
just boring me at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess coming out of the film, moving on to things like, you know, how this movie has changed the game in a lot of ways.
It has. It really has.
High concept films.
Yeah.
From
where it started from.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about films like Edge of Tomorrow. We talked about Happy Death Day, which had a sequel this year as well, which really played with how like time loops can work, and like in the second one, someone else gets caught in time loop and they're aware of it.
Yeah.
Other films, there's Haunter, which was a low-budget film with, I think, Abigail Breslin, where she plays someone who's aware of a murder that's about to happen and keeps experiencing it. Before I Fall, which is a, like, teen drama version. This girl knows that she's going to get hit by a car after a party on a Friday night, and she keeps reliving the last day of her life. It's a terrible version of that movie, but it's definitely out there in the world. Is there a specific kind of film that you think would benefit, or, like, type of film that would benefit from, like, a time loop Groundhog Day style film?
I'm just gonna put Ready or Not. Let's do it.
Oh,
yeah, because you can play all the board games.
Oh yeah, just keep coming back to it every single day.
And Andy McDowell's in it.
There we go. Cinematic universe is where we're at right now.
Yeah. Because you could have a lot more gory to it, you know, but there's mysticism involved with why you have to play the game in Ready or Not.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I think one movie that I actually equate quite similar to Groundhog Day is The Imitation Game, where it's a film about, you know, Alan Turing trying to solve this equation. Every day it resets. It's more of a real world application of it, but can you imagine the monotony of trying to get past that over and over again? To me, I think of like, it'd be fun to use that kind of high concept in like a mafia film. Okay. Where like this guy's gonna have a hit on him at the end of the day, and it's like he's trying to find a way to like right the ship and fix the consequences before he hits that.
I like that concept.
Yeah, I think like you could Groundhog Day a whole bunch of different things,
which they have, which they really did have.
And we've seen them to varying degrees of success. I personally have not caught Edge of Tomorrow, and I really want to, because
you should.
It's one of those things where like the concept is so good.
Yeah, it is a good concept. Bill Paxton's in it. It's wonderful, and it has this flavor of Groundhog Day. But there is a driving necessity to get it right. Not just enjoy yourself, but it plays on it. I like that. Yeah. One of the best sci-fis that were out in the last couple of years. Edge of Tomorrow. Ready. They have two
Ready.
Yeah.
Live, Die, Repeat.
Yeah, it had two titles.
And then I think the book is even called All You Need Is Kill. So there's a third title. Let's just throw it in the mix. You know, I think jumping back to something that I think is really cool about Groundhog Day is the cinematography. John Bailey, who did Silverado.
Right.
He looked at the film as being like, he could do something really flashy with the cinematography, or he could try and shoot every sequence to look like it's the exact same as the previous one.
And cinematography doesn't get the accolades for comedy. It just doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
And well, this one, its genius is that it's not trying to be flashy. It's not trying to be something you'd call out. But then you see the thing like every day where he steps in the puddle after seeing Ned Ryerson. Every time that is shot, it's shot from pretty much the same angle.
Yeah.
Slightly varying degrees of zoom.
It's
so that
not
you can
the
get
same
the right
thing.
amount of impact.
Right.
Like it's the same repetition piece, but it's not shot in a way to flashy remind you of it. You kind of forget it until, oh, he did it again. And again, like that's everyone pulling their chord the way they're supposed to. No one's trying to outdo someone in the film.
Right. The Bill Murray, when he does it, is like, again.
Yep. I love the moment where he's about to do it and he stops, and then someone else goes through and he's like, like again, like that's a very Bill Murray
small.
thing.
When you're stuck, you gotta have your small victories, right?
Yep.
Your small victories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot of my thoughts on Groundhog Day. It's one of those films I watched it once and I wanted to repeat it over and over again. You know, as long as I'm not living it, it's fantastic. Where do you see Groundhog Day in your like pantheon of films?
It's one that you kind of forget that is actually a lot funnier because it's so dark and foreboding, but it's a pretty funny movie to watch. If you really like Bill Murray, and this was before he did the one with Richard Dreyfuss, What About Bob?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Which he kind of did fill, in What About Bob. But this is where I think Bill Murray is comfortable.
Yep.
Where you don't know if he's, being a jerk to be a jerk, or he's just being a jerk to enjoy himself,
Yeah, and you can see shades of that in his later work, things like Lost in Translation, Rushmore.
Yeah.
A lot of the films he's done with Wes Anderson, he kind of plays that very likable person.
Are you just being a jerk to have fun, or am I on the joke, or is this for you? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For me, it's a film that I don't know if I would watch it every single year if it wasn't for Groundhog Day, but like every February 2nd when it comes up, I'm like, I'm going to watch that again. Yeah, I'm going to put that in. And it is a movie that makes you appreciate the day-to-day that you get to live in. Sometimes you get to have that minutia, and it is a nice feeling every once in a while.
It does have the feeling of February where everybody's tired of winter.
Yep.
You just feel it.
We want it to be over.
You want it to be over.
And it
never ends. But everything is not even nice and beautiful anymore. It's just that last stage of winter where everything is just
Yep. But that's not how we feel about the movie. We enjoy the movie quite much. We just don't like winter. So yeah, that's it for everything on us. Groundhog Day. If you guys haven't seen the film before, go check it out. I actually found out that it's currently streaming on Vudu right now for free with ads. So if you don't have a streaming service, you don't want to spend the money on it, it's available for free. So go check it out there. Make sure if you enjoyed this content, please give us a like. Comment below with your thoughts on the film, what you thought, if you've seen it 1,000 times, if you've never lived through it once. Share the video for your friends. If you guys haven't checked out our Patreon page, go ahead and check out that. We're going to have some links down below where you can find Patreon page and some information on that. If you can't afford to, though, we just appreciate you guys being here. Just help share us and get the word out there some more. Nick, where can we find you out about?
St. Paul Filmcast will start up again February 9th, and we'll come back for the 3rd season. And hopefully we'll have Kyle back on, too. We can find St. Paul Filmcast on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify.
And you can find my reviews on goatfilmreviews.com. We're coming down to the end of our time with the Oscar death race. I'm trying to knock out as many films as I can before that big night comes up. It's always my favorite time of year. So that's all there is for us, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed reliving this episode if you've already watched it once. Or maybe reliving it over and over again, forever and ever. Click play. It's fun. No, that's it, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.